He slid the envelope toward me with a smile that behaved but did not belong to his eyes. The paper whispered over the desk, and my stomach answered with a small dip. No calendar invite, no subject line, just my name on thick white, the blue ink finishing on a dot pressed so hard it left a dent. "Congratulations," he said lightly, as if the word could convince the room to relax. His hands stayed clasped. The tremor in his ring turned to a tiny metronome. Outside the glass, phones rang, a printer coughed, someone laughed at the wrong time. Ordinary noises sounded staged. I didn't touch the envelope. Good news here comes with cake and a group email. Quiet paper means something else. I tried to smile back and felt it catch, the way a zipper snags on its own teeth. "Open it now," he said. "Not command. Plea. There's a small window before you open a thing that can change you. A thin shelf where you are still the person you were 5 minutes ago." I balanced there. The office smelled of coffee I hadn't drunk. His calendar squares were full, as if he'd overbooked his future to avoid one stubborn minute. "You're making me nervous," I said. My laugh sounded like a spoon tapping an empty glass. "I'm nervous too," he said. He doesn't do nervous. He does punctual and bullet points. Seeing it on his face felt like finding a crack in a wall I'd leaned on for years. I took the envelope. It weighed more than paper should. My name looked too intimate in his handwriting. He'd written it carefully, like someone practicing a confession. I noticed the coffee ring on his blotter, the crooked photo of his children, the tear in the leather arm of my chair. Details that gather when you're avoiding the door you must open. "If this is a joke, it's a poor one," I said. "I wouldn't joke with you," he said, and the grief in it made my knees consider sitting. I slid a nail under the flap. The glue let go with a tired sigh. Inside, stiff card. No letterhead, no watermark, just the kind of blank that means the words are the only thing that matters. I looked at him. He watched me the way people watch a glass about to fall. "You're scaring me," I said. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. Sorry can be a bandage or a blade." I drew the card out part way and felt the corner bite my thumb. The sting sharpened the room. My breath shortened, the way it does in a lift that drops. Before I looked, I remembered my tidy decisions, leaving early for the school run, packing the sort of lunch my daughter teased and still ate, answering emails kindly. My life has been built from small reliabilities. He said my full name, the one my grandmother used. I looked up. His eyes were red around the rims. "Whatever happens," he said. "I should have told you sooner." "When?" I asked. "Years ago," he said, and the sentence landed between us like a box you stop carrying. I lifted the card. It carried a weight that wasn't physical. For a heartbeat, I saw my reflection in the glass behind him. A woman in a careful blouse, shoulders squared in the way women learn to be taken seriously. A woman who doesn't cry at work. "Please," he whispered. And with that word, I understood this wasn't about targets or head count. This was about me. I turned the card over. The world didn't explode. It tilted and everything inside me slid to a new corner. The hum of the lights grew loud, then far. The clock's second hand jerked and froze. I could smell citrus from his hand gel, the fiber of the envelope, the metal ghost of the stapler. Small things, clear, because the big thing refused to introduce itself. My fingers began to shake. He opened his mouth, closed it, pressed his lips together. I didn't look at him. I looked at the card, willing the letters to arrange themselves into something that fit the life I had measured with calendars and cupboards. They didn't. A colleague knocked and didn't enter. The handle moved once, a polite question the door answered by staying firm. Down the hall, a trolley squeaked a rhythm that sounded briefly like my name. I pressed my thumb into the paper's corner until pain proved I still had edges. If you're watching this, know I didn't go looking for drama. I went looking for lunch. I found a line in my day that split it into before and after. He smiled like a man who had practiced the expression and lost the words. I stood like a woman who avoids cliffs and discovered one built into the floor of her office. I read the first line. My hands shook so hard the card trembled. A small white flag in a war I didn't know I was fighting. The ceiling lowered, the carpet tilted, air grew corners. The neat hour cracked, and the careful woman who had walked in was no longer completely available to me. Then I saw the second line, and the third, the name at the bottom, the date, Every part of my life reached for something to hold that wasn't there. My heartbeat climbed into my throat, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it. He stood, then thought better of it, fingers hovering inches above the desk as if he might catch me if I fell. "Sit," he whispered, but I couldn't. Sitting felt like surrender. The letters blurred, cleared, and settled into a meaning that should not have existed in my world. The envelope slid from my hand to the floor, landing with a soft, final sound as the door handle turned again and a shadow paused on the other side. The card did not explain anything. It only pushed me back to the envelope on the floor. I picked it up as if it might burn. Behind the stiff card, a second thing waited. It slid into my palm, light as ash. A photograph, old and softened at the corners, printed on paper my grandmother kept in albums that smelled of clove and dust. Office light threw a faint glare across it. I tilted the image until the faces cleared. A girl stood before a wooden gate, hair in 2 uneven plaits, socks slipping down. She held a toy rabbit with one ear bent, fur rubbed to silk. Her mouth had that brave, careful half-smile children make when adults say, "One more for Grandma." On either side stood 2 adults, a man with work-thick shoulders, a woman with a belted coat. The scene felt ordinary. That was what made my skin prickle. I knew the girl. You would know your own posture anywhere. The weight on one leg, the right foot turned slightly in, the set of the chin. It was me. But the coat wasn't familiar, and the gate belonged to no house I have ever called mine. The room seemed to step back. My boss watched my face like his own was tied to it. He didn't speak. His silence irritated me, then frightened me. He had summoned me, placed this in my hands, and now stood like a witness. "Where did you get this?" I asked, but my voice belonged to some younger version of me. He nodded at the photograph. "Look closer." I turned the print. The satin finish kept fingerprints like ghosts. Around the girl's neck hung a pendant on a thin chain, a small oval locket with a hairline scratch along one side. My heart jolted. I knew that locket the way I know the lines on my palm. It waits in a dish by my bed. I touch it before I sleep without thinking. The way people touch wood. It was my mother's, then mine. That is the story I have told myself. I raised the photograph until the pendant blurred, then eased it back into focus. The scratch caught the light exactly as mine does by the window. Not alike. The same. "Why is this here?" I asked. "Because you were meant to see it," he said. And the word meant sounded like a plan that outlived its maker. "Who are these people?" I touched the adults on either side. Ordinary faces. Ordinary can hide anywhere. He steadied his breath. "I can't tell you everything," he said. "I don't have the right, but I can tell you this much. It isn't a mistake." Heat climbed my neck. "You called me in, handed me an envelope that made my hands shake, and now you give me riddles. What am I looking at? Something you lost before you knew you had it." I studied the background. The gate's paint flaked into curls like fish scales. A narrow lane ran behind it to a small house whose roof had seen too many winters. A bicycle leaned against a wall, back wheel missing. A cat watched from a windowsill as if trapped from the inside. I flipped the photograph. Blue ink had bled a little into the paper. At first, the script looked like a dream I couldn't keep. Then the letters settled. A northern town. One an aunt once mentioned with the warning that our family never lived that far north. Beneath the place was a date. I stared at the numbers. Their calm did not match the noise inside my chest. I reminded myself that dates can be wrong. Photos get mislabeled. People make notes years later and the past bends to their memory. I told myself this because the alternative stood at the edge of my mind, patient as someone knocking with the back of their hand. "Who wrote it?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know." "You brought me something you don't understand?" I understand enough to be afraid. Afraid sat strangely on him. I slid the photograph back, then out again, as if the truth might change while my eyes were turned. The card lay on the desk, its words heavy as a paperweight. I wanted to put both things somewhere stupid, like the bottom of a laundry basket, and pretend tomorrow would be stubborn enough to look like today. "Why now?" I asked. "Why today?" "Because the past arrived," he said. "And because you deserve to know before it tells you without me." I studied the girl's eyes. Children forgive cameras for not understanding them. This child looked like she knew the picture might have to carry something later she couldn't explain. What do you want me to do? First, he said, breathe. I did. Air felt like work. Then what? Go home, he said. Look through your mother's things. If the locket is the same, you'll find there's more to it than you think. My hand went to my throat out of habit. Then remembered I'd left the locket in the dish that morning, too rushed for rituals. Its absence felt like a missing tooth. He looked at the slice of sky between buildings. I can't, he said. There are people who... Listen, I'll explain more after you've looked. My phone vibrated, an unknown number sliding across the screen. I silenced it. The photograph trembled. I steadied it against the desk and turned it, pretending to check the month as a way to avoid the year. The year waited, stubborn still. It was written in a gentle hand, kind to whoever read next. It was a year I have no right to remember. A year that should have been impossible for the girl in the picture. A year that landed like a cold breath on my neck, a year from long before I was even born. That night I didn't sleep. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that there were reasonable explanations, and that in the morning my boss would text, laugh at how dramatic we both were, and tell me it was all a mistake. But morning came, and no message did. The photo sat on my kitchen table, its edges curling like it wanted to escape. I made coffee, forgot to drink it, then poured another one just to watch the steam rise and fade. The air felt thick like it had opinions. My daughter's laughter drifted from her room, the one sound that still made sense. I promised myself I wouldn't let her see me like this. Unsteady, half-breathing, chasing shadows inside a piece of paper. The clock reached midnight before I admitted I wasn't going to sleep. I picked up the photograph again. The date stared back at me, patient, certain. I traced the numbers with my thumb until the paper warmed, as if it had a pulse. That was when my phone rang. The sound hit the quiet like a thrown stone. Unknown number. At that hour, unknown meant bad news or wrong number. I should have let it ring. I didn't. Hello? My voice came out smaller than I expected. For a second, there was only breathing. Soft, steady, female. Then a voice. Don't trust him. I froze. Who is this? Your boss, she said as if reading my thought. Don't trust him. He's not who you think he is. I almost laughed, that sharp, nervous kind of laugh that's really a scream in disguise. You've got the wrong number. No, she said, but you will if you keep asking questions. And then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, waiting for the screen to light again. To tell me this was a prank, some late-night spam call. But the room stayed still. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the whisper of the curtain against the window. My hand shook until the phone slipped onto the counter. When I finally moved, I called my boss. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same. I texted, "Who was that?" Then deleted it. How would he even know what I was talking about? I looked back at the photo, the locket gleaming faintly in the low light. Go home. Look through your mother's things. That's what he'd said. I hadn't opened that box in years, the one that smelled like old perfume and cedar. It lived on the top shelf of my wardrobe, the one thing I couldn't bring myself to throw away after she passed. I brought it down, dust dancing in the lamplight. The lid creaked like a whisper from another time. Inside were cards, a few photos, a brooch, and the smell of someone who used to hum while folding laundry. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue, was the locket. My locket, I held it under the lamp. The same scratch on the side. I turned it over. The hinge had always been stiff, but that night it opened easier than ever before, like it had been waiting. Inside was no photo. Just a tiny strip of folded paper tucked behind the glass. My fingers trembled as I eased it out. The handwriting was small, delicate, almost frightened. If you're reading this, you were never supposed to find it. Keep it safe. Remember the name. The rest was torn away. A cold breath ran through me. The paper smelled faintly of lavender and dust, like my mother's drawer. But I knew this wasn't her handwriting. I checked the box again. Nothing else inside. And then, as I sat there staring at that half message, my phone lit up again. The same number. This time, I didn't answer. A voicemail icon appeared seconds later. I waited, counted to 5, then pressed play. The same woman's voice, lower now, trembling. You have to listen. The name on that note, don't say it out loud. Don't show anyone. He's been watching for years. You think this started today? It started before you were even born. The message ended in a static sigh. I stared at the phone like it could explain itself. The room had grown darker somehow, though every light was on. Outside, a car slowed near my window, headlights sweeping across the floor. My heart stopped for that single moment, imagining someone waiting, watching, but it passed, just a neighbor. Just the world being ordinary while mine began to unravel. I took a picture of the note with my phone, enlarged it, and stared at the edge of the tear, trying to guess the missing word. A name, a single word that had been erased from my history. Somewhere between logic and fear, I whispered to myself, "This is insane." But then, as I set the note down, the corner of the locket caught the light, revealing something I had never noticed before. On the inside of the lid, almost invisible, engraved in letters so small they could vanish with a blink, a name, one I had never seen in my life. Not my mother's, not mine, not anyone I knew. The engraving read, Eleanor Finch, and below it, faintly scratched, as though added later, "Find her before they do." My blood went cold. I looked back at the photograph, the child me, the strangers beside her, the pendant hanging just as it did now. Then my phone buzzed once more, a new message flashing across the screen. No number this time, no name. Just 3 words that made my throat close. "You found it." I wrote the name on a sticky note because I didn't trust my phone. Eleanor Finch. It looked ordinary in blue ink, but my hands wouldn't steady. Morning light hit the locket engraving and made the letters glow like a warning. I am a woman who keeps spare keys and labeled envelopes and receipts in order by month. Instead, I had a photograph that argued with time, and a name that felt like a door with no handle. I dressed too neatly, as if buttons and a clean collar could hold me in place. My daughter kissed my cheek on her way out. "You okay, Mum?" she asked. "You look floaty." I said I was just tired, watched her turn the corner, then put the photograph and locket in my coat. I left a small list on the counter: milk, petrol, call dentist, because ordinary tasks are anchors when the room tilts. The town on the back of the photograph sat 2 hours north, a place motorways skim past. Hedges rose, fields widened, and the radio kept speaking until I turned it off. I said the name out loud, testing it. Eleanor Finch. It tasted like iron. Rain dithered on the windscreen and then gave up. At the square, I parked beside a bakery that smelled like butter and patience. Swallows stitched the air over the church roof. A charity shop displayed teacups that didn't match, and a velvet hat that remembered a better party. I walked to the library first, because librarians keep maps to hidden rooms. The woman at the desk listened without moving her face much. "Family history?" she asked. I nodded. "Name?" "Eleanor Finch." She typed with 2 careful fingers, then sent me to the microfilm machine in a drawer that smelled like school cupboards. I wound through the years until the wrong year appeared. Wrong for me, not for the town. A headline blinked. Local woman missing after mill accident. The first line gave me the name I had brought with me. I read the column 3 times. The river had risen. A wall gave way. 1 body found, another unaccounted for. A later issue used the phrase presumed dead with the kind of politeness small towns save for grief. No funeral photo, no grave. I wrote dates in my notebook with a hand that wasn't steady and wiped my eyes before I could call it crying. "Mill's still there," the librarian said when I returned the roll. She drew me a pencil map. "If you're looking for family, try the registry office. Or Mrs. Kemp at the charity shop. She knows every breakfast since 1974. The mill crouched by the river like an animal pretending to be a building. Weeds had climbed the bricks. A broken sign warned me not to climb the fence, and I obeyed just enough. Water moved brown and patient under the bridge. I held the locket and tried to imagine a woman with my cheekbones walking this path in a belted coat, thinking about the day ahead, not knowing which part of it would never arrive. Back in town, the charity shop's bell rang like a mild idea. A woman with bright eyes looked up. "Help you, love?" she asked, and the way she said love sorted something in me. "I'm looking for someone," I said. She may have lived here. Eleanor Finch. The woman tilted her head. That's a ghost we still talk about, she said kindly. What's she to you? I picked between the truths and chose one. Family, I said. She studied my face the way people do when they are trying to place a resemblance. Perhaps, she murmured, you've her mouth. She brought a box of parish notices and funeral sheets. We keep what the council throws away, she said. We sifted through paper until dust drew a fine line across my thumb. No funeral for Eleanor. One mention of a memorial service that never settled on a date. In the margin, in a tidy older hand, see also adoption records, special cases. I swallowed air that didn't help. Where would those be? Registry, she said. If they like you. The registry office had a carpet the color of calm. A clerk listened to my question and kept her face still. We don't release records, she said, but we can confirm existence. She vanished. I counted ceiling tiles the way you count breaths when you are waiting for news. When she returned, something small had shifted. There was a file, she said. Unusual. Indexed as a private arrangement. She paused. The file isn't here. Where is it? I asked. Archived, she said. Or transferred. She glanced at the clock, then wrote a company name on a scrap and slid it across the counter. My company. The one that pays my mortgage and fills my calendar. You didn't get that from me, she added. Our company keeps a satellite office on the edge of the industrial estate, a building that tries not to be noticed. I told reception I was auditing legacy property paperwork, true enough to fit. And a young manager with a nervous badge took me to a basement archive room and left me among metal shelves that smelled like sleep. Rows of gray boxes made neat sentences no one had read in years. I followed labels by year until I found the one from the photograph, sitting too calmly. A box near the bottom had a corner of its label peeled away, as if someone had changed their mind about being found. I pulled it forward and lifted the lid. Folders lay inside like stacked breaths. I checked codes I did not understand until I reached a slim folder tied with fading string. No code at all. The knot gave easily. Inside were 5 sheets, a carbon copy set, and a small envelope with a paperclip that had rusted itself to commitment. I read the first page. It referred to employee welfare, provisional guardianship, emergency placement. The words arranged themselves into shapes my mind would not draw. I read the second page and felt the floor adjust under my feet. Names were blacked out with old-fashioned ink, thick and shiny at the edges. A stamp from the town council, a date that matched the one in the newspaper. I knew the handwriting before I read the name. A tidy, careful hand that pressed the dot of an I like a small nail. I had seen it on birthday cards for the team, and on the envelope that made my hands shake. I wished I were wrong. I was not. The third page was a letter to a private solicitor referring to one female infant, to be placed with discretion, mother incapacitated, family circumstances unclear. The letter asked for confidentiality, due to company reputation and ongoing repairs at the site. I read the paragraph again until each word felt like a cold coin in my mouth. The small envelope. Inside the folder held a photograph, smaller than the one I carried, cropped close around a child's face. My face. Someone had written a single initial on the back, then crossed it out and written another. Beneath both, a number I didn't know and a note, "C. Lockett." My hands no longer felt like mine. A footstep in the corridor made me flinch. I slid the papers back in order and listened to the air. No one came in. The building hummed like a long, polite cough. I looked again at the authorizing line, the deliberate letters, the neat surname, the date that had no business living that far back in my life. My vision narrowed until the page was all I could see, the way a camera forgets the room and remembers only the face. It was my boss's signature, tidy and certain, on a document filed years before I was born. I drove home with the folder in my bag, the pages whispering every time I turned a corner, like they wanted to confess before I was ready to listen. The sky pressed low, the kind of gray that makes headlights necessary even at noon. I couldn't stop reading his name on that document in my head, the signature I'd seen on meeting notes and holiday cards, the same one now sitting beneath the words provisional guardianship. When I reached my street, I sat in the car long after the engine died. My hands lay useless on the steering wheel. I had built my life out of routines, school runs, meetings, bills. and all of them now looked like scenery on a stage someone else had written. Inside, the house felt too small for the noise in my chest. I set the folder on the kitchen table next to the photograph and the locket. 3 ordinary things that had suddenly rearranged the shape of my entire life. I stared at them until the clock struck 3 and the walls began to hum with the quiet that lives between seconds. Then I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice hoarse. "I was expecting this." "You knew," I said. My voice came out flat, too calm. "You signed my life." There was a pause long enough to hear him breathing. "Please," he said. "Not over the phone. Can you come here?" "I shouldn't," I said. "You should," he replied. "Before someone else reaches you first." The words chilled me. "Who else?" He hesitated. "Come to my house, now, bring what you found. And don't tell anyone you're coming." I didn't remember the drive, only the sound of rain collecting in the wheel wells. When I reached his street, his porch light was off, but the curtain in the front window shifted as if someone had just stepped back. He opened the door before I could knock. He looked older, smaller, not like a boss, but like a man who had forgotten how to stand tall. The air inside smelled faintly of whiskey and paper. He gestured toward the living room. On the table lay a stack of envelopes, each labeled in that same careful handwriting. Names, dates, company projects, all different years. My stomach turned. "You kept records," I said. He nodded. "I kept everything, even the parts that ruined me." "Start talking," I said. He poured 2 glasses of water, though his hands shook. "You deserve to know," he said, "but you need to understand I wasn't supposed to be part of any of it." "Any of what?" He stared into the glass like it held forgiveness. 30 years ago, the company ran a research division no one talks about anymore. Experimental treatments, biotech patents. We funded it quietly, off the books. One of our lead scientists, your mother, discovered something she shouldn't have. "My mother wasn't a scientist," I said. "She worked in payroll." He smiled, but not kindly. "That's what she wanted people to believe. She used that position to hide what she was doing. When she found out the truth, she tried to expose it. They silenced her. I helped them." I stepped back, the room spinning. "You what?" "I didn't know what they planned for her," he said quickly. "They told me it was a transfer, a cover-up, that she'd be relocated and safe. But when she disappeared, I realized too late. I wanted to scream, to break something, but the sound wouldn't form." "And the photo?" He looked at the floor. "She had a daughter, a baby. They told me the child would go to an adoption agency, but the paperwork." He pointed to the folder I carried. "They made it private, off record, your name changed. Everything erased. And when the department shut down, I signed the closure files to protect what was left of her research. And you." My throat tightened. "You signed my life like it was an expense form," he winced. "I thought if I buried the truth deep enough, it would die with the company's secrets. But when the old archives were digitized, your name reappeared. Someone flagged it. I knew they'd come looking again." "Who are they?" He rubbed his face. "People who still believe that project could make them rich. People who think you might know where her research went." "I don't know anything," I whispered. "I believe you, but they won't." I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not my boss. Not the man who gave annual speeches about teamwork, but someone who'd spent decades trying to keep his own ghost from catching up. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because secrets rot," he said softly, "and because I see her every time I look at you. I've been waiting for the courage to tell you. You found the photograph. That forced my hand." He walked to a cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a small envelope sealed with red wax. "This is what I meant when I said you deserve the truth before it finds you." He placed it in my hand. "For when you're ready." I turned it over. No writing, no mark. Just that seal like a drop of dried blood. "What's inside?" I asked. He looked at me with eyes that had already said too much. "The rest of her story," he said. "And yours. But once you open it, you can't go back to pretending you didn't know." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling like a man who had just finished a confession he never thought he'd make. I looked at the envelope again. Its weight felt strange, light but dense, like it carried something alive. For a long time, I didn't move. I just listened to the ticking of the wall clock and the distant rain, thinking how strange it is that the truth can sit so quietly in your hand while your world collapses around it. Finally, I looked up and asked the question that had been scratching at my throat since I arrived. Why me? He smiled faintly, almost with pity. Because you're her daughter, he said. And because someone else already knows that too. A knock rattled the door before I could answer. His face drained of color. They found you, he whispered. You need to leave, now. What do you think is inside that sealed envelope? Comment below before you find out. The knock came again, sharper this time, impatient. He motioned for silence. My breath sat high in my throat. The hallway clock clicked a nervous rhythm. He crossed to the window, parted the curtain just enough to see outside, then dropped it quickly. They're not supposed to know where I live, he muttered. We don't have much time. I wanted to ask who they were, but his voice left no room for questions. He pressed the sealed envelope into my hand. Take this, he said. Don't open it here. Don't even open it at home. Drive somewhere with noise, people around, a place no one can listen. The knock became a pounding. A man's voice called his name, polite but firm. He looked at me. Out the back, now, I hesitated. You're coming? No, his voice softened. If they see me, they'll follow you. Go, I'll stall them. I wanted to argue, but the fear in his eyes was a language I understood instantly. I ran through the kitchen, past a row of cold dishes, and slipped out the back door into the rain. Gravel stuck to my shoes as I reached the car. When I turned the ignition, the porch light flicked on behind me. Two dark figures stood at his door. One of them stepped inside as the other scanned the street. I ducked low and drove. I didn't stop until I reached a motorway service station 20 miles away, the kind with 2 bright lights and the smell of old fries. I parked under a camera and locked the doors twice. My heart still hadn't slowed. The envelope lay on the passenger seat, the wax seal unbroken. I stared at it, wondering how a small thing could hold so much gravity. My fingers itched to open it, but his warning echoed, a place no one can listen. I went inside, bought tea I didn't want, sat in a booth, and waited until the tremor in my hands subsided. The people around me were strangers, truckers, students, families traveling north, all living normal lives. I envied them for it. Then I broke the seal. Inside were 3 folded letters and a small key taped to the last page. The handwriting on the first letter was elegant, feminine, and careful. Not my mother's, but close. I began to read. If you're reading this, it means I failed to keep you safe the way I promised. My name is Eleanor Finch. I worked for them once. I believed the research could save lives, until I realized they weren't trying to cure disease. They were trying to own it. I ran. I hid the evidence. I hid you, my throat closed. I read the next line twice. There were 2 of us who tried to expose it. Your father and me. They made him disappear first. I thought I could outrun the rest. I was wrong. I felt the room tilt. My father, the man I was told died in a car accident before I turned 2, had never been mentioned again after that. My mother's silence had always felt like grief. Now it felt like a cover. I read on. Your guardian, the one you call your boss now, was supposed to protect the research until it could be destroyed. I trusted him, even after he betrayed me once. Maybe he's trying to make it right. If he is, help him. But be careful. They'll use your blood to find what we hid. My blood. The second letter was shorter, dated years later, the ink more hurried. If you find the locket, follow the engraving. The key belongs to the locker at Ashfield Station. Everything else is there. Proof of what they did and what they still want. Don't trust anyone who offers protection. The company changed names, but the people didn't. You'll know them when you see them. They always smile too easily. I traced the word locker. The key taped to the page was tiny, brass, with the number 41 etched on one side. I peeled it off carefully and slipped it into my pocket. The final letter wasn't addressed to me. It was written to him, my boss. If you ever open this, know that forgiveness isn't a gift you earn. It's something you live through. You took part in what happened, but you also saved her. That has to count for something. Tell her the truth when you can. She deserves that much. The last line stopped mid-sentence. The pen dragged down the page as if pulled away. The tea in front of me had gone cold. The chatter around me blurred into background hum. I folded the letters, placed them back in the envelope, and pressed my forehead to the window. Outside, a lorry pulled away, red lights smearing in the rain. I called his number. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. My mind began to drift through every possibility. Maybe he'd escaped. Maybe they'd taken him. The uncertainty felt worse than either truth. A news notification blinked across my phone. Local man found dead in his home. Foul play suspected. I didn't need to open it to know the name. My heart already knew. I sat in silence, watching the reflection of my own pale face in the glass. The rain drummed harder, steady, like a heartbeat outside my body. I wanted to cry, but tears felt too light for what I'd just learned. Grief mixed with guilt, with anger, with something I didn't yet have a name for. I whispered to myself, "You tried to make it right." Then I looked down at the key. Number 41, Ashfield Station. Whatever he'd died protecting was waiting there. I started the car again, the letters on the seat beside me like passengers who wouldn't stop whispering. Behind me, the service station lights faded into fog. Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, and the faint glow of something that felt like destiny waiting to be. Disturbed Ashfield Station sat at the edge of nowhere, a forgotten stop between two cities that had long stopped caring about it. By the time I arrived, the platform was empty except for a vending machine that hummed like it was talking to itself. Rain had followed me the whole way, misting the glass, clinging to my coat, and tracing the outline of my reflection in the car window until it didn't quite look like me anymore. I parked beneath a flickering streetlight, the kind that buzzes once before going dark, and tucked the small brass key into my fist. The number 41 pressed into my palm. My mother's handwriting echoed in my head. Follow the engraving. Everything else is there. Inside, the station smelled of iron and memory. Old posters curled on the walls, their corners browned with damp. I walked past a ticket booth sealed with plastic, toward the row of storage lockers that lined the far end of the corridor. Most were rusted shut. Dust and cobwebs had claimed the ones nobody wanted, but halfway down the row, number 41 waited, newer, less forgotten. Someone had cleaned it recently. That was what stopped me. Someone else had been here. I hesitated, scanning the corridor. Empty. The key fit the lock with a soft click. The door creaked open and released a breath of cool, stale air. Inside sat a single black box, smaller than a shoebox, bound with a leather strap. A faint smell of cedar drifted out. The same scent I remembered from my mother's closet. I lifted it gently, feeling its weight. It was heavier than it looked. When I tilted it, something shifted inside, metallic, delicate. I unbuckled the strap and opened the lid. Inside were documents wrapped in a faded blue cloth, a USB drive sealed in plastic, and a small voice recorder with an old-fashioned red button. On the cloth, written in neat cursive, were 3 words. For her eyes only. My fingers hovered over the recorder. I pressed play, a hiss of static, then a voice. A voice I hadn't heard in over 20 years. My breath caught. If this reaches you, sweetheart, it means I didn't make it far enough. I hope you're safe. I hope someone loves you the way I meant to. My mother's voice. Older, tired, but hers. I pressed my hand over my mouth as if to keep the sound inside me. They took everything. The research, the names, the people who helped. But they couldn't take you. I made sure of that. You have to finish what I started. Not for revenge, but for truth. They can't keep pretending to save the world while they sell pieces of it to the highest bidder. She paused, the silence filled with soft breathing. Maybe tears. The man you trust, the one who helped me once. He'll carry the guilt forever. Don't hate him for it. He thought he was saving you. In his way, he did. But he can't protect you now. No one can, not really. If they find you, tell them nothing. Burn what's inside this box if you must. But if you're brave enough, use it. The recording clicked, then ended. I sat there in the hollow quiet of the station, the rain tapping its slow applause against the glass. My chest ached with everything I hadn't said to her. The way she'd said sweetheart felt like sunlight pressed into sound. I turned to the documents. The first file contained scientific data, pages of coded notes, formulas, and diagrams. I couldn't understand any of it, but the header made my stomach turn. Project Regenesis. There were medical charts, patient numbers, test results, genetic markers. The dates spanned decades. Many were labeled terminated. Some, only a few, said viable. My pulse climbed as I turned another page and saw my own name at the top of a form. Subject V14, next to it. Status, unknown. The world tilted. I pushed back from the bench, air catching in my throat. My mother hadn't just hidden research. She'd hidden me. The USB drive slipped from my hand and clinked against the tile. I picked it up and stared at it, knowing this small thing might hold everything. Proof of what they did. Or what I was. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow. Deliberate. I turned sharply. A man stood at the far end of the platform. Tall. Coat collar turned up, hands in his pockets. His face was shadowed by the overhead light, but his posture was calm. Too calm. Late night for research? He said, voice even. Every instinct screamed to run. Who are you? I asked. He smiled slightly. The kind of smile that doesn't move the eyes. Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. I stepped back toward the locker, clutching the box against me. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, he replied. That box doesn't belong to you. It was my mother's. He took a step forward, and I mirrored it backward. Your mother didn't understand what she was protecting, he said. But you can. Hand it over, and maybe I can help you understand what you really are. His words slipped under my skin like cold water, what I really am. I tightened my grip on the box and bolted toward the exit. His footsteps followed. Quick, heavy, sure. I burst onto the platform, rain slashing sideways. A train roared past without stopping, its noise swallowing my heartbeat. I ducked behind a column, clutching the box to my chest. The sound of his steps grew faint, then vanished. When I finally looked up, he was gone. But on the ground where he'd stood, something small glimmered in the wet light. A company ID card, cracked down the middle. The logo was old, faded but still visible. My company's. And beneath it, stamped in faint red ink, Division R, Regenesis, the name I just read in my mother's file. My fingers tightened around the box as thunder rolled overhead. Somewhere in the dark, a train horn cried. Long, low, mournful. I looked down at the recorder again. It blinked once, though I hadn't touched it. Then my mother's voice returned. Faint, almost a whisper. If someone finds you before you're ready, run. I didn't sleep that night. I drove until the roads thinned to single lanes and the headlights showed more fog than distance. The box sat on the seat beside me, humming with a kind of silence that felt alive. When the fuel light blinked, I stopped at a roadside motel, whose sign buzzed with half its letters missing. Inside, I locked the door, pulled the curtains closed, and placed the box on the bedspread. The USB drive caught the lamplight, a small pulse of silver in the gloom. My hands still smelled faintly of rust and rain. I had no plan, only the weight of too many truths. I opened my laptop and slid the drive in. It whirred once, then a folder appeared, Regenesis Final. Inside were audio files, research notes, and one labeled simply, Message MP3. My stomach knotted. I pressed play, static. Then a cough. A man's voice, hoarse, tired. His voice. My boss. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it out. I froze. They came faster than I expected. I tried to give you time. If you found the box, then you know what she was trying to protect. And if you've listened this far, then you've probably learned that I was the one who helped them start it. I gripped the bedpost. His tone wasn't defensive. It was confession. We thought we could cure the body's weakest links, erase inherited illness, rebuild immune systems from the inside. But the investors wanted patents, not cures. They wanted control. Eleanor saw it first. She begged me to stop it, to destroy the data. I didn't. I thought we could redirect the project quietly, but when she took the evidence and ran, they decided to erase her instead. He coughed again, the sound scraping like gravel. I didn't know she was pregnant until after the accident. When they found the child, I signed the transfer papers myself, thinking I could protect her from them. You. I felt the blood drain from my face. You weren't supposed to know. I told myself ignorance would keep you safe. But secrets are parasites. They live off whatever decency you have left. I tried to make it right by hiding what remained of the research. I buried the project, but not deep enough. Someone dug it up again. They want what's in your blood. You're proof that it worked. I stopped breathing. Proof. Worked. I don't know what it's done to you. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I just know they'll never stop. They think the formula is still locked inside you, coded in your cells, like a map only your body can read. That's why you have to run, Natalie. You have to disappear before they make you their experiment again. He paused, a long exhale, like the sound of surrender. Your mother wanted you to live free of this. I wanted that too, though I failed her. She loved you more than I have words for. And the voice broke. Static swallowed the rest. I stared at the laptop until the screen dimmed. The hum of the cheap motel fridge became deafening. My reflection in the black screen looked like someone else's. Someone older, harder, stripped down to bone and will. In my chest, fear fought something new, a steady current of rage. They had built an empire on the promise of saving lives, then traded mine like a commodity. My mother had burned everything she loved to keep me out of their hands, and he had spent decades pretending that silence was redemption. I ejected the drive and slipped it back into the box. Then I unfolded the last page of notes inside. Most of it was equations, but one line stood out, handwritten in my mother's neat script. The final key is with the founder. Only he knows where the cure, and the truth, sleeps. The founder. There was only one man still alive from those early years, the CEO of our company. He'd been with it since its inception, back when it wore a different name. I'd seen him once, years ago, at a corporate gala, white hair, a voice that filled rooms without raising. The kind of man who believed in the permanence of his own power. My pulse quickened. The next clue pointed straight to him. I searched his name. Still the same. Still on the board. Still issuing statements about innovation and integrity. But now I could see the pattern beneath the words, the smoothness that hides rot. I wanted to believe I could just send everything to the press, to the police, to someone. But every document bore her name, and mine. If I went public, I'd be the story, the experiment that lived. The motel's old radiator clicked on, then off. The quiet pressed close again. I thought of my mother's voice. If you're brave enough, use it. I closed the box and wrapped it in a towel. My next move was clear, even if it scared me more than anything that had come before. I would meet the founder, but not as an employee. Not as a frightened woman running from ghosts, as the daughter of Eleanor Finch, the experiment that survived. I gathered the box, the letters, and the recorder into my bag. When I stepped outside, the dawn was just beginning to cut through the fog, pale and unforgiving. A train whistle echoed somewhere in the distance. I thought of his final words again. You have to disappear before they make you theirs. But part of me knew. I couldn't run forever. I had to finish this. As I walked toward my car, a shadow moved in the corner of the lot. Someone stood near the vending machine, watching. When I turned to face them, they stepped into the weak light. It wasn't a stranger. It was the CEO. He smiled like he was greeting an old friend. Going somewhere, Miss Finch? He asked. The way he said my real name made my blood turn cold. He said my real name like he'd been rehearsing it for years. Calm, deliberate, proud of how it landed in the air between us. Miss Finch. The syllables crawled under my skin. For a moment I forgot the weight of the bag in my hand, the ache in my chest, the hours of driving and hiding. It was as if everything had been moving toward this single moment. The man who'd built my mother's prison standing under a broken streetlight with rain glittering in his hair. How do you know that name? I asked. He smiled the way men do when they've already decided the answer doesn't matter. "You look just like her," he said. "Eleanor, I wondered how long it would take before you found me." Every instinct screamed to run, but his tone pinned me in place. I had expected a monster, but he looked ordinary, polite, composed, dressed in an expensive suit that Rain refused to touch. That somehow made it worse. "I know what you did," I said. My voice trembled once, then found steel. "You built Project Regenesis. You destroyed lives. You killed her." He tilted his head slightly. "Killed?" he repeated, as if testing the word. "That's not quite accurate. Your mother was difficult, passionate, idealistic. She chose her fate. We simply allowed her to keep it. Allowed." The word broke against my teeth. "You hunted her." He sighed softly, as though I were a student misunderstanding a lesson. Eleanor was brilliant, but she couldn't see beyond her own morality. What we were doing was evolution. You should understand that better than anyone. "I understand exploitation," I snapped. "You turned people into experiments." "And you," he said gently, "are the proof that it worked." My pulse tripped. He stepped closer, careful, like he was approaching a fragile thing. "You've seen the files, haven't you? The results? You were one of them, the only one who survived. Eleanor believed she'd hidden you, but I've known where you were all along. I let you live the way she wanted, free, untouched. And look at you, healthy, strong, no trace of the illnesses that haunted your family for generations." "You are Regenesis." "No," I whispered. "Yes," he said. "You're the future she tried to bury." Something inside me twisted, a mix of revulsion and disbelief. "Why are you telling me this?" He smiled again. "Because it's time. The project is alive again. Legally this time, publicly. With your cooperation, we can finish what your mother started. Your DNA is the key. You could help millions. Imagine being remembered for that instead of running like a criminal." The offer was dressed in righteousness, but the eyes behind it were pure greed. "You think I'd help you?" I asked. He shrugged. "I think you will, once you understand the alternative. Secrets have weight, Miss Finch. They crush the people who carry them. Help us, and you'll never have to hide again." I laughed then, a sharp, broken sound that startled even me. "You mean I'll never be free again?" For the first time, his smile faltered. "You're emotional," he said. "I expected that. But you'll see reason. Your boss did." My stomach turned. "You mean you killed him?" He lifted his hand slightly, palm out. He made his choice. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. "You're smarter than he was." I took a slow step backward, the box pressing against my ribs. "He died protecting this." "Protecting me." His gaze flicked to the bag. "Then he died for paper and sentiment. There's nothing in there that can't be replicated. Except you." I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. "You'll never touch me," I said. He smiled again, small and patient. "That's what your mother said." Lightning cracked somewhere behind the hills, briefly illuminating his face. Calm, almost tender. The kind of calm that knows it's already won. I turned and ran. He didn't shout. He didn't chase. He simply called after me, his voice cutting through the rain like a promise. "You can't hide from what you are, Eleanor's daughter. Sooner or later, you'll come to me." I didn't stop until the motel was a memory, and the road blurred into dark fields. My body moved on panic, my mind replaying every word he'd said. "You are Regenesis." When I finally pulled over, my breath came in gasps. I opened the bag and looked again at the contents. The letters, the USB, the voice recorder. The truth was there, but it wasn't enough to stop him. I needed something undeniable, something public. I remembered my mother's note. The final key is with the founder. If that was true, the folder he'd handed me wasn't everything. He'd kept something, a record, a backup, something only he could access. I took out my phone and searched through his public statements, his interviews, his speeches. In one article, there was a photo of him at a charity gala, and around his neck, gleaming under the stage lights, was a pendant. The same pendant my mother wore. The same one I had found in the photograph. I zoomed in until the image blurred. The same scratch along the edge. I pressed my palm against my locket and felt the faint ridge in the same place. 2 pieces of the same thing. 2 halves. My pulse slowed. My mother's engraving. Find her before they do. The her wasn't a person. It was her other half. If my locket held one part of the encryption, the DNA key, his pendant held the rest. Without both, the research couldn't be used. That was why he hadn't taken mine yet. He needed me to come to him. I stared out at the night, the rain thinning into mist. I finally understood why my mother ran, why she hid me behind lies and new names. She hadn't just been saving me. She'd been saving everyone. I whispered into the dark. You'll never finish it. But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't over. He would come again, smiling, polite, patient, and the only way to end it was to walk back into the world I'd spent my life running from. As I started the car, the radio flickered to life on its own, static filling the air before a voice. Faint, crackling, came through. It was his voice. Come home. Miss Finch, I've been waiting for you. The transmission cut off. My reflection stared back from the black screen, the locket glinting at my throat. This time I didn't turn it off. This time, I drove straight toward him. By the time I reached the city, dawn was bleeding into the horizon, a pale, washed-out light that made everything look like it had been held under water. I hadn't eaten or slept in over a day, but my mind was sharp, clear in that way only exhaustion allows. Every streetlight, every passing car, felt like it was watching me. The company headquarters loomed ahead, tall glass and steel reflecting a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain again. I parked across the street and stared at the building that had hidden my entire life behind polished floors and mission statements. I'd come here for paychecks and promotions. Now I'd come for the truth. The lobby was nearly empty. I used my old badge. Surprisingly, it still worked, and stepped inside. My shoes left a faint trail on the marble floor. The security guard nodded as if I belonged there. Maybe in a way I did. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. The mirrored walls threw my reflection back at me a dozen times. The woman I used to be, the daughter of Eleanor Finch, the experiment they tried to bury, all staring back in silence. When the doors opened, he was waiting. The CEO, the founder, stood behind his desk, hands clasped like a priest before confession. The pendant gleamed faintly against his tie. I knew you'd come, he said. You've taken enough from me, I replied. My voice didn't tremble this time. I'm here to finish it. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. We can talk like civilized people. I'm not civilized anymore, I said, and laid the box on his desk. His eyes flickered to it, but his expression didn't change. You've opened it. Yes, I know what you did to my mother, what you did to me, and what's in that pendant around your neck. He reached up and touched the chain. You figured that out. She called it the key, I said. 2 halves of the same encryption. Without both, your data means nothing. He smiled, thin and precise. Smart girl. Woman, I corrected. For the first time, he laughed. You have her temper. No, I said quietly. I have her will. I pulled the voice recorder from my bag and pressed play. The room filled with my mother's voice, the confession she'd recorded years ago. Her words echoed off the glass, accusing human. They took everything. They turned healing into a weapon. Don't let them make you one of them. His face changed then. The smile faltered, just enough to show the man beneath the power. Old, haunted, cornered. You don't understand, he said. What we built could have saved millions. Your mother was willing to let it all burn because she feared what she couldn't control. She feared what you'd become, I said. He took a slow step forward. Give me the locket. We can rebuild it together. Ethically this time. You can guide it. Don't let her ghost stop you from saving lives. I stared at him. For one strange, awful second, I wanted to believe him. To think that maybe all the pain, all the hiding, could still mean something. But then I remembered his smile under that streetlight and the sound of my boss's dying voice. I already saved a life, I said. Mine. And before he could react, I unclasped my locket, placed it on the desk beside the box, and poured the contents of the USB drive and documents over it. Then I took the small lighter from my pocket, the one my mother had given me when I first moved away for university. and flicked it. The flame caught the edge of a page. Bright and fast, he shouted, lunging forward, but I stepped back. The fire spread across the desk, eating through decades of secrets in seconds. The pendant chain glowed red before snapping, falling into the flames. The heat rose, sharp and hungry. "You fool!" he shouted. "Do you know what you've destroyed?" "Yes," I said. "Everything that ever owned me." The sprinklers burst to life, hissing water over everything. Smoke twisted like dark ribbons to the ceiling. He stood frozen, staring at the ashes. I turned toward the elevator. Behind me, he called out over the chaos. "You think this ends here? The formula isn't gone. It's in you." I stopped, turned slightly. "Then you'll never have it." His expression flickered. Confusion, then something like awe. "You're exactly like her," he whispered. "I hope so." The elevator doors closed between us. By the time I stepped out onto the street, sirens were already wailing in the distance. The morning sun had finally broken through the clouds, slicing through the glass towers like truth through lies. I walked without looking back. That night, I drove to the coast. The sea was rough, wild the way I felt inside. I sat on the hood of my car, watching waves smash themselves against rocks as if they could wash the world clean. I took the last remaining item from the box, an unopened envelope, yellowed with age. The one my boss had given me first, the one that started it all. It was marked in my mother's handwriting. "When you're ready." My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Sweetheart, if you're reading this, you've already done more than I ever could. Don't let what they built define you. You were never their experiment. You were my miracle. Live. That's the only revenge worth having." I pressed the letter to my chest and let the wind take the rest. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid. The truth didn't crush me. It freed me. As the waves carried the ashes of paper and secrets into the horizon, I whispered the words my mother never got to hear from me. "Thank you." And I swear, in that moment, I felt her there, watching, proud. If you were in my place, would you have burned it all? Or tried to use it to change the world? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you would have done. And share this story with someone who still believes secrets can stay buried forever.